If you're interested in how people actually lived before convenience reshaped daily life, this topic matters. Meal planning before supermarkets wasn't about nostalgia or poverty. It was a disciplined system shaped by storage limits, labour, seasonality, and constant awareness of supply. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, like this video if this kind of grounded historical analysis matters to you, and leave a comment with the period or region you'd like us to cover next. Now let's get straight into it. Households planned meals around stores already in hand, not around future shopping. Before supermarkets, meals were planned backward compared to today. Households did not ask what they wanted to eat and then go acquire it. They began by accounting for what was already stored. Pantries, cellars, smokehouses, crocks and grain bins defined the menu long before a pot was set on the fire. Flour, dried peas, beans, salted meat, root vegetables and preserved fats were inventoried mentally, often daily. A household head or cook knew exactly how many weeks of grain remained, how much lard was left, and how quickly fresh items needed to be used before spoiling. This approach, sharply limited waste because food was not abstract. Every ingredient represented labour already spent planting, harvesting, preserving or trading. Nothing entered the kitchen without a plan for its full use. Modern survivalists can apply this by planning meals around pantry contents first, rotating stock intentionally instead of shopping impulsively and, figuring it out later. Meals followed the agricultural calendar closely. Fresh foods appeared briefly and were consumed aggressively while available. Greens, berries, milk-heavy dishes and fresh meat dominated for short windows. As soon as those windows closed, meals shifted towards stored staples without complaint or debate. There was no expectation of year-round variety. This prevented waste because surplus was either preserved immediately or eaten daily until gone. Milk became cheese or butter within hours. Excess vegetables were fermented or dried the same day they were harvested. Animals were slaughtered only when the household could process every usable part. Today, applying this mindset means eating perishables first, preserving excess immediately, and accepting repetitive meals during peak abundance instead of letting food rot in the refrigerator. Preservation wasn't really a separate hobby. It was actually built into daily meal planning. A stew wasn't just dinner. It was a way to soften dried beans, stretch meat, and, create leftovers that could be reheated safely the next day. Bread baking schedules matched grain availability and fuel use too. And honestly, bones went back into the pot repeatedly until there was just nothing left to extract. Fermentation, drying, salting, and smoking. These were routine extensions of cooking, not just emergency measures. Waste stayed low because really preservation wasn't delayed. The moment surplus appeared, it was dealt with right away. For modern viewers, this all translates into learning one preservation method well, and using it continuously rather than waiting for ideal conditions or specialized equipment. Leftovers were not treated as inferior meals at all. They were actually planned outcomes. A roasted joint of meat, for example, might serve 3 or 4 distinct meals. First as a roast, then sliced cold, then chopped into a stew, and finally boiled down for broth. Vegetables, well, they followed similar cycles, appearing fresh, then cooked, then incorporated into soups or porridges. Nothing was thrown away simply because it didn't look appealing. Texture and flavour changes were just expected, really. This practice, you see, drastically reduced waste and fuel use. Survival-minded households today can apply this by designing meals intentionally in sequences rather than as isolated events, making sure that every major ingredient has a second and third purpose. Large portions were, well, impractical. Cooking required wood, charcoal or peat, all of which demanded a fair bit of labour. Overcooking meant wasted fuel and effort. Meals were filling but measured. People stopped eating when hunger was satisfied, not when plates were cleared out of habit. This naturally reduced food waste at the table. Modern households can regain this discipline by cooking smaller portions more frequently, especially when relying on stored foods, and resisting the urge to over-prepare simply because modern appliances make it easy. Peels, rinds and trimmings rarely went into the trash. They fed animals, enriched compost, or were boiled into stocks. Even ashes from cooking fires were reused for soap making or soil treatment. Waste streams were circular because disposal options were, well, quite limited. Applying this today doesn't require livestock. Vegetable scraps can be frozen for stock and bones can be reused. Even minimal composting, restores awareness of food value and discourages careless disposal. Meal planning knowledge was shared, corrected, and enforced socially. A household that wasted food was seen as careless or incompetent. Skills were passed down orally and through observation. This collective memory really reduced trial and error waste. Modern preppers and historians, can really benefit from replicating this approach by documenting household systems, sharing methods and, refining practices together instead of treating food management as some sort of private struggle. Pre-supermarket meal planning, it actually worked because it aligned consumption with reality. Supplies were finite, labour was visible, and preservation was immediate. Waste stayed low, not through moral pressure, but honestly through structure. Anyone who's serious about preparedness can adopt these principles, and they don't have to give up modern tools to do it. If this kind of grounded, historically accurate analysis matters to you, then do consider subscribing to Warfield Prepper Chronicles. Share this guide with others who value practical history, and maybe leave a comment with the era or topic you'd like examined next. This channel, it exists to preserve real knowledge, not nostalgia.